welcome back to Jacey's Creek, and today we are doing episode 3, None of the Above. And this came out on October 13th, 1999. So before we get started, let's talk about where you should find me if you want to talk about this episode with me, or if you're listening along and you want to figure out how you can get in contact with me. So the first place you can go to is my YouTube channel. That's Jacey's Creek Podcast. The second place that you can go to is Instagram. That's Witter and Potter. And the third place you can go to is Pacey and Joey. And that is all the places that you can find me. And without further ado, let's get into this episode. So the first scene that we have is scene 1 of Joey. And Joey's in her bedroom and she's asleep and the alarm is going off and the ringing stops and Joey gets on and throws her shoes and runs to class, and we come to the door and there's a sign that says PST testing in progress, and she sees Dawson in the room taking a test, and then she begins to bang on the glass and Joey's like, Dawson, 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 and she starts banging on the glass more and she's screaming Dawson's name, and the alarm actually starts ringing and the radio goes, good morning, it's 6:45 and 65 degrees, and Joey wakes up from her dream and turns off the alarm. So there's a couple things I want to say with this scene is that Joey's going to have a lot of dreams throughout this episode because she is just stressing out so badly. But the second thing I want to say is, did you guys ever have like those radios when you guys were little, of like where it would like come on and it would be like the radio, like mine was like 99.4 and then or something like that, and it would come on every morning and it would scare me half to death. And there was one time I remember it wasn't like a good song and I was like probably in 4th grade, and I jumped out of bed and I pressed the snooze button because I knew that my dad would not approve of this song, so I was like, heck no, and that's what it kind of reminded me of. So the second scene that we have is scene 1 of Pacey. And at the school, they're in the school hallway, and Andy is walking down the hallway looking at her notes, and Andy's trying to memorize something, and she's saying a bunch of words. And then she turns the corner and runs directly into Pacey, which last episode these two broke up, so it's very awkward. And Pacey says, oh, and Andy says, God is Orless. And Pacey says, ow, damn. And Andy sighs and says, don't worry, Pacey, this isn't going to be one of those horribly awkward, hope boy didn't mean all those hurtful things he said during the breakup moment. And again, like, I feel like Pacey said the truth. Like, it was hurtful to Andy, but also, like, he was just saying, like, I'm not going to forget what you did, and what you did wasn't acceptable. And Pacey says, well, that's a relief, because I sure don't want to play the guy feels guilty about the breakup, even though it was the girl who had an affair with the mental patient scene. Which, dang, like, you had to go there, Pacey. Like, he was starting to, like, come up, like, okay, like, this was okay. And then he said with the mental patient scene, I'm like, Like, that was more harsh than what Andy said. And Andy says, fair enough, and Pacey says, not that it's any of my business anymore, Andy, but have you heard of over-preparing for a test? And Andy says, what, as opposed to not preparing at all? And Pacey says, as opposed to making yourself crazy with the word practice in front of it? And Andy says, if you want to throw everything you worked for, that's fine by me. Which, okay, Andy was right, like, them two worked for it, like, but she kind of just said, like, you want to throw away everything I worked for, then damn, okay. That's what she was saying. And then Pacey said, here, me on the other hand, I am not going to let our little bump in the road throw me off my course. See you around. And they walk away. And then we have the third scene, which is scene 2 of Joey. So after that, we have believe everyone... Is this the one? Okay. No. Okay. So then we have scene 2 of Joey, and it cuts to the school library, and Principal Green is talking to Joey alone. And Principal Green says, "You keep your wits about you, Joey, and you want to see a shot at a National Geographic Scholarship." Which again, like, I don't feel like college is really like a big deal, but in this show they really do make it a big deal. And Joey says, "Yeah, so everyone keeps telling me and telling me and telling me." And Principal Green says, "Too much pressure on you, huh?" And Joey sighs and says, "I couldn't sleep again last night." So obviously Joey's having like problems sleeping because she's just stressing out, which makes sense, and I feel like it's her anxiety that makes her do it. And Principal Green says, "Trust me, I know, I've been there." And Joey says, "I keep thinking if I don't ace this exam, I'm going to end up making beds and cleaning toilets at the dead end motel for the rest of my life." Which, I mean, there's more that you can do if you don't go to college. Like, there's plenty of things that you can do, but obviously in high school they kind of make it seem like there's everything that you need to do that deals with college, which nowadays especially they make it that big of a deal. And Principal Green replies back to Joey by saying, "Listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a night off just to relax. I don't know, hang out with a friend, write a movie. You're gonna do fine. You're gonna do better than fine. And the faculty here and I have confidence in the world with you." Okay, so here's the thing that I want to say about this. I feel like in this whole season, Principal Green is so good at making everyone feel comfortable. And another thing I have to say about it is the fact that last season we did not see the support from any of the faculty, and now suddenly we do, which I really, really like. So then the fourth scene we see is scene 3 of Joey, and she's in the school hallway and Dawson is at his locker, and Joey comes up to him and Joey says, "Dawson?" And Dawson says, "Joey, hi." I don't know why they always greet each other with their names, like Dawson and Joey. Joey says, "Since we agreed to the peace with honor, would it be against you the rules of engagement to ask you for your help?" And Dawson says, "Of course not." And Joey says, "Good, 'cause I could use some." And Dawson says, "What do you need?" And Joey says, "I don't know, night of mindless entertainment, Jurassic Park, or maybe even those asteroid atomic bombs where Bruce Willis or George Clooney or someone with the recurring hairline, something managed the entire planet without breaking a sweat. I just need something to take my mind off the test." Which, I love how Joey is stressing about this test, and Pacey is just literally like, he doesn't really give a crap, because in the scene where they're all taking the PSAT, Joey was stressing about it, while Pacey was literally just asleep. And Dawson says, "Yeah, you got a lot of writing, I know." And Joey says, "Just my entire future." And Dawson says, "You tell me when and where." And Joey says, "How about tonight?" And Dawson says, "Tonight." And then Eve comes down the hallway, and Eve says, "Hey, sports fan." And Joey says, "How about 9 o'clock?" And Dawson says, Actually tonight she and I were thinking, hey, why don't you come with us?" And Joey says, "Yeah, I might, on another planet in a different universe, no offense." And Joey walks away, and Eve was like, "What was that all about?" Which I love how Eve's just oblivious, but it's kind of sad that Dawson and Joey are becoming friends again, and Joey and Dawson cannot talk the same way that they used to. It's not where Joey could be like, "Hey, I really need your help with this," and Dawson would automatically come up to her and be okay with it. It was literally the fact that Dawson actually had a life again. He had to do his things, and he had to be with Eve most of the time. And Joey just had to deal with it. It was another factor, what I was talking about last episode, where they move on and things happen and things continue to go. But it was really the fact that Joey and Dawson were not the same as season 1 or season 2. It was the fact that in season 3, they actually had to deal with what was going on and move on. And that sucked for Joey most of the time. So then we have scene 5 of Joey. And Joey's at work, and Rob is telling her story, which Rob is her boss. And Rob says, I mean, this guy is not exactly what you call a ladies' man. But I tell you, it's easy. There's only one rule, and plain and simple. Give the ladies what they want. And Joey says, how about giving me what I want, Rob? And Rob says, I thought you never asked. And Joey says, Friday night off, so I can study for the PSATs. They're Saturday. And Rob says, yeah, sure, why not? No sweat. I remember what it's like. Of course, I didn't take off for the PSATs. And Joey says, what about Daddy built the universe? And Rob says, no, just swapped. Actually, I hired a ringer. And seriously, paid some brainiac a couple $1,000s to take it for me. Won a scholarship too, which I've talked about this show before, but The Fosters, I watched it a couple weeks back and I finished it, and it was about, there was an episode about where, I think it was the SATs, where Brandon, he's one of the characters, and he took the SATs, but he was paying, like, he was getting paid to take it from someone else. And when the principal found out, like, she had to tell him that he was not going to college, which I'm not sure if it's actually true or not. I'm not sure if it's, like, what would happen if you cheat on the PSATs or anything like that, but now you can get, like, literally anything if you want to know, like, all the information on how to cheat. Like, you can find a way how to cheat. And Joey says, well, since I don't have that kind of cash, thank you, I owe you one. And Rob says, well, here's a thought. You let me take take you out for a post-PSC celebration Saturday night, you and me. And Joey says, thanks, but husband doesn't really like me seeing others, Rob. The truth is, I'm a lesbian. I love how Joey plays that card. She's like, I'm a lesbian. I can't go out with you. And Rob says, oh, anyone I know? So, is it a date? Saturday night? What do you say? And Joey says, would it be alright if I said no? And Rob says, yeah, sure thing, Potter, no problem. Which, I do like how he says no problem, but obviously it's going to be a problem later. But it's the fact that Rob is older than Joey and he's asking her out. But it's not that, it's just the fact that Rob is just really creepy as it is. And, like, kind of, like, making her seem like, oh, like, you should go out with me. Oh, like, you should do this. Oh, you should do that. And Joey's like, I'm uncomfortable, but I have to stay with this job because my sister and her son. So the next scene that we have is scene 1 of Pacey and Joey. So this goes inside the school library, and Dawson has everyone come together around a table in the back. And Pacey says, an envelope, this is why you convenience hush us into a corner. And Joey says, Pacey, read the fine print. It says ETS as in Educational Testing Service. Which I love how Joey just knows that. And Jen says, Dawson, this is not what I think it is. And Dawson says, think again. And Annie says, oh God. And Jack says, how'd you get this? I love how the whole group is here together. Like, this just makes my heart really happy. And Dawson says, does it matter? And Annie says, of course it matters. We're in Al Crimson and sent the Fiddle prison. I'd like to know who's taking care of the rat for. And Dawson says, someone gave it to me. And Joey says, a certain blonde with locks and a name that rhymes with Steve. I love how Joey's just so sassy about this. And Pacey's like, oh, she's good. I like that girl. She's good. And I love how Joey's just like, I don't like the fact that she gave you this. And Pacey's like, oh, that girl Eve, she is a keeper. And Joey says, once again, Dawson Leary proves the grown is mightier than the brain. And Andy says, well, I mean, have you looked inside? It could be a joke. Anyone can just whip out a label. And Pacey says, well, there's one way to find out. And Andy says, oh, go ahead, Pacey. Way to complete your return to the halls of academic loser dorm. Which Andy was so encouraging when they were together, and now she's just like, oh, no, Pacey, you're a loser, so therefore you should open it up. And Pacey says, maybe you like to open up, Andy. I mean, after all, cheating seems to be more activity that you're comfortable with these days. And Pacey just calls out Andy on so many different levels. And Jack says, look, no one's opening up anything. Dawson, just bring it to where you got it, and none of us ever saw it. And Jen says, geez, not to say the only typical student here. Apparently, as the only typical high school student, what's the harm in peeking? And Pacey says, peeking? I think I can give you a detailed crib sheet in half an hour. I love how Jen and Pacey are just like onto this. Like, we should totally just peek inside this. And Dawson says, guys, look, admittedly my first reaction was to dump it. But you heard Principal Green. I mean, these things are a game. And as wrong as cheating sounds, I thought I would bring it to you guys to discuss. And Joey's like, okay, morals to Dawson. Come in, Dawson. This is wrong. Besides, it's the PSATs. No one's even required to take it, let alone do well. And Dawson says, unless you want to qualify for the nation scholarship, and he slides it to Joey. And Jen says, or if you want to get too busy, or Joey says, or you want to get too beaten up, and slides it to Jack, Jack clears his throat, Jen says, or if you want to get too busy getting crap beaten up out of you to study, maybe that's Joey. And Jack clears his throat and says, or if you want to go to Harvard, and slides it to Andy. And Andy says, or if you want to fail a relationship that has you putting through emotional ringer, and it slides it to Andy, and Andy says, or if your failed relationship has put you emotional bringer these days. And Pacey says, or if you're just too darn busy getting busy, and slides it to Andy. And Dawson says, the point of all this is we could use it for something. And Principal Green enters the room, and Dawson turns over the envelope like, good job, Dawson, but you could do better. And Principal Green says, all right, people, let's take our seats. One simple math session coming your way. And the fire alarm rings, which I'm like, why the heck is this ringing during a PSAT? And Principal Green says, on second thought, all right, you know the drill. Leave everything where it is and file out orderly fashion. And Principal Green says, Mr. Leary, now, please. And Dawson says, okay. So they all go outside, and they're all nervous, and then the test is taken. So they don't know who took the file, which we'll learn later who. And the next scene that we have is Joey. And so not only is Joey just having these like very stressful dreams, she is also stressing about who took the test, because she's filling up a gas tank on the boat, not paying attention when it overflows. And Rob says, Joey, what the hell? What are you doing? And Joey says, it was a mistake, calm down. And Rob says to the boat owner, look, I'm sorry about that. She's new. Your gas is on the house. And Joey says, you didn't have to do that. I filled the gas, so I spilled a little. It's not exactly the export evidence. And Rob says, that's $38 coming from your paycheck, Potter. And consider your precious night off canceled. Like, she just spilled a little bit of gas, and he's like, nope, like, you're not getting the night off, and you're not having, like, a good paycheck, which is wrong in so many levels. And Joey says, what? And Rob says, you heard me, you're working tomorrow night. And Joey says, oh, so that's how it's gonna be. And Rob says, that's how what's gonna be. And Joey says, this isn't about me messing about on the job. This is about your bruised ego. Not to use female rejection, are you, Rob? And Rob says, I have no idea what you're talking about, Potter. But he does. He does know the fact that Joey rejected him. And Joey's like, so this isn't about the fact that I rejected you at all. That's why you're taking $30 out of my paycheck. And that's why suddenly, all of a sudden, that I messed up a little bit, you're just going to make you sound like a complete jerk. Like, it's just proof that Rob is just not the person that you want to be with. And I don't know, I love how Joey just stands up for herself and makes it known that she isn't going to take his crap. So then we have scene 7 of Joey, and this is Dawson's, or Joey's dream, and the scene is where they're all in Principal Green's office, and Principal Green says, 1 month into my tenure here as principal at Cape Side, and I got the national cheating scandal on my hands. Look, it makes no difference whether you guys take and fall for this, or you guys go down to some general gesture of teen loyalty. But someone better fess up, and they better fess up now, otherwise you're expelled. And Joey gets up, and he goes, Joey? And the alarm goes off. So then we have scene 3 of Pacey and Joey. So Joey says, so what kind of black market booty do you have for us today, Dawson? Just happened to find all the Microsoft will be trading at tomorrow. Dawson says, look, I called you guys here because I want you to give it all, to give us all a chance to redeem this situation. And Jack says, how? Dawson says, whoever stole this test, give it back. And Jen says, what, it's already stolen, Dawson? And Pacey says, I love the way this girl thinks. Like, first he says that about Eve, and then he says that about Jen. Like, I love the way this girl thinks. Like, she's saying everything that I'm thinking. Pacey's just like the sense of humor in this episode. And Dawson says, look, the point is, it's missing. Yesterday, it wasn't. And Joey says, so what's the harm in just letting it be lost, Dawson? And Jack says, I agree. Whoever needed it more desperate than the rest of us, only quicker. And Andy says, doesn't it bother you? Doesn't it bother anyone but this group has a level of integrity? And Pacey says, well, I think it speaks for a group who responded with a hearty no. I hope that Pacey's like, no, that doesn't bug us. What bugs us is the fact that we're having this conversation. And Jen says, I'm starting to feel like some sort of psychotic abused lab rat. And Joey says, you're not a lab rat, Jen. Dawson is. Like, this whole scene is supposed to be so serious, but it just makes me laugh the whole time. And Dawson says, watch it, Joey. And Joey says, throwing parties, crashing boats, upstaging marching bands. Dawson, if your rope was more yanked, you'd be a church bell. And I love how Pacey's just smiling at all this. And like, go Joey, go little rock star. And Dawson says, Joey, Eve has nothing to do with this. And Joey says, oh no, it's typical Dawson Leary behavior to offer your friends companion. And Dawson says, she didn't tell me to do anything with that test. And Joey says, you're so blind with her cover girl looks that you don't even notice if she did. I bet when she offered you that test, you didn't even fire an complaint her way, did you? It's just your friends who have to sit here and suffer through Dawson Lear moral play. Bleach blonde, who bangs, willing to give up Noah, not an audition. And Dawson's like, are you finished? And Joey says, I could go on. I love how Joey just goes off with Dawson. Like, obviously, I don't know whether she's mad about Dawson hanging out with Eve, or, because I thought they made up, but Joey's just really mad that he's doing, like, another thing, because Joey knows that this is not Dawson, and it's just proof that. And Dawson says, look, I'm sorry I brought you all into this, but one of you has taken this charter on another level. Here's the deal. I'm going to leave my locker unlocked. Whoever took this test will be put inside by 5:30 tonight. And Pacey says, oh, come on, Dawson. The petty thief among us already left the crime scene. There's not going to be a return thing now. What's the inconvenience? And Dawson says, to do the right thing. Which, Dawson, you stole the test. How is this the right thing at all? Like, it's not the right thing. Like, it's just you saying it's the right thing because you don't get to cheat on the test. Like, that's the whole point. And I feel like if Nolan, the person who didn't steal the test, like, didn't steal it at all, like, Dawson still would have cheated and he wouldn't have been doing the right thing. Like, and I love how, I hate how Dawson is like, to do the right thing, but he like stares at Pacey in some sort of way, like, oh, like, you stole the test, I can tell. He's just blaming his friends rather than Eve. So then we have scene 2 of Pacey, and after the group has broken up, Andy goes over to Pacey, and Andy says, you got a second? It's important, Pacey. And Pacey says, sure. You know, Andy, I'm not really in the mood for some sordid heart-to-heart today, or if we could just cut things short. And Andy says, okay, consider this final negotiation. And she hands him a box. And Pacey says, what's this? And Andy says, look for yourself. And Pacey says, well, it's some t-shirt, my Pampers cap, and Dumbo? I love how he says Dumbo. That's how he says it. He goes, Dumbo? Which is the first thing I ever gave you. And Andy says, everything you gave me is in this box. All pictures, CDs, jewelries, it's all in there. And Pacey says, you don't think maybe this is a little harsh? And Andy says, Pacey, this is not going to be one of those long drawn up breakups. You're not going to be dealing with the basket case you dealt with last year. I have my life in order and I tend to everything to keep it that way. I have my plan. And Pacey says, right, Harvard, upper alleys. And Andy says, I just want you to be a part of it. I wanted you to be a part of it, and if you can't, then you get nothing. And Pacey says, not even the memories. And Andy says, especially not those. And Pacey says, fine, look, if these are the terms, where do I sign? And Andy says, you just did. Which, I have a couple of thoughts on this. Number one, Andy, you don't need to hand Pacey a box. Like, why did she hand him the box back? Like, what I did is I gave it to Goodwill. Like, I asked him, okay, so what I did was, with my breakup, I had everything in a box, and I made it in a box, and I, like, said my goodbyes in a lot of ways. I still have, like, the pictures, but I don't have the things that he gave me. Because I put all of those in a box, and then I slowly kind of drawed it out, and I said, hey, do you want your sweatshirt back? Because we had a sweatshirt, and he was like, he didn't say anything. And then a couple minutes went by, and I had already gave his sweatshirt back to Goodwill. Like, I just gave it to Goodwill, like a $50 sweatshirt. And he asked for his sweatshirt back, and I said, oh, he was like, Emily, I'm like, I gave that to Goodwill. So I think that's what Andy should have done. I think she should have just gave it to Goodwill. And I threw, like, the rest in the trash. Like, I was like, bye. But I still kept the pictures. And someone told me, like, you should keep that stuff. And I'm like, I'm planning on moving in a little while. And high school isn't going to be very long. So I might as well just throw that stuff away. But I did keep, like, a lot of sentimental things, but not really much. And then the second thing I want to point out is when Andy says it's not going to be like one of those gone out breakups, you're not the basket case. You're not going to be dealing with the basket case you met last year. I have my life in order, and I tend to do everything to keep it that way. I have a plan. And Pacey knows that plan, but I feel like Andy was a little bit harsh on that. Like, Andy, that's your problem, not Pacey's problem. He doesn't need to know all this, which I've been through a breakup, and I know how that feels. And let's just say, like, when you're going through a breakup, you want to prove everything to that person that you're over them. So then we have scene 13, which is scene 4, Pacey. And Pacey is where Joey's working. And Pacey comes up, and he's just ringing the bell. And obviously, like, he's drunk, and he's just ringing it. And Joey says, I'll be there in a minute. And Joey, like, he rings it harder, and Joey says, no ordering, Pacey. And Pacey says, listen, I'm a legendary customer, and I demand some service. Missy, I love how Joey just automatically knows that he's been drinking, and Pacey says, "Only liquor, I promise," and he puts his hands up. And the reason why I love this is I love the fact that Pacey goes to Joey right after something happened. In his drunk state, he went to Joey. Nobody else. He didn't go to Dawson. He didn't go anywhere else. He went to Joey. And after he puts his hands up and says, "Only liquor, I promise," Joey asks, "What's wrong?" And Pacey says, "It's nothing a little bonfire won't fix. You see, our friend Andy decided that she needed to cleanse from her mates to her sanity. The only casually contents of this box, behold." And then he falls over and he goes, "Oh, hello, Mr. Duck." And Joey says, "Pacey." And Pacey says, "Hey," and the box falls over into the water. And Joey says, "Pacey," and Pacey says, "Hey, Joey?" And she goes, "Yeah, do me a favor. I shouldn't come home like this. You think you could call my dad and tell him I'm hanging out here?" And Joey says, "Yeah." And Pacey's he's looking down at the water, and he goes, "That's my girl," where the picture just sinks into the water. Which I feel bad for Pacey, and it's just proof that he's not really a good drunk when you really think about it. And I feel bad for Pacey because he has to deal with all of his feelings. Which, again, he went to Joey, which I like, and that's one of my favorite parts. So then we have scene 15, which is scene 5 of Pacey and Joey. So it's back to Joey's job later in the evening where Pacey is sitting outside, and it's where Joey is inside. She's asleep studying, and Pacey is sitting against the wall, and he's putting his head back. And I just love this part of the scene because it just looks so cute. And Pacey says, when Dawson walks up, he says, "Well, if it isn't Inspector Get a Closins, what brings you the part of late at night?" And Dawson says, "You're drunk." And Pacey says, "You're quick." I love Pacey's smarties remarks to it. And Dawson says, "It's the night before the PSATs. Pacey, why are you drinking?" And Pacey says, "I don't need to study. I got the test, right?" And Dawson says, "If you have it, give it back." And Pacey says, I wish I had it home birth. I really wish I did, but I don't. It's not here. It's not at home underneath my bed with my Playboys." I really says Playboys. That makes me laugh. We had a conversation with my family a couple weeks ago. My grandma was talking about how my aunt had a Playboy, and my little cousin, who was 9? Yeah, he's 9 now. And he was like, "Ooh, can I have it?" And obviously they weren't going to give it up. They were no. And that's what it reminds me of. And there is a Playboy probably in my attic, not gonna lie. And where was I? And he says, "It's nowhere to be found." And Dawson says, "Pacey, we've been friends for 16 years, and I'm not stupid." And Pacey says, "Friends, huh? Friends, that word friends, it's an interesting word. And it implies that you actually believe when your friend is telling you something." And Dawson says, "When they tell me the truth." And Pacey says, "When he tell..." You want to know that I find that so amusing about this situation. What I think is really, really rich that you're giving yourself for incapable of stealing this test. Alright? You thought about it. You didn't throw away. You didn't give it back to Eve. You brought the test to us. Which is true. Pacey even a drunk Pacey says, things more harshly, but he always tells the truth. Pacey, no matter what, even if he's drunk, he'll tell the truth. And Dawson says, "No. I thought I wanted to consent the people that I trusted to demand what the best thing was to do. I never thought anyone would be so weak or self-motivated to actually swipe it." And Pacey says, weak and self-motivated, huh? Which are those two colorful adjectives would I be? And Dawson says, you know who you are, Pacey. And Pacey says, yes, I am, Dawson, and you, so are you. You, Dawson Leary, are a selfish white son of a bitch who cares more of his color rose default's belief system than the people who live up to. And I love how Pacey says that, because he does say it in like a harsh tone, but he does say it like it needs to be done. And Dawson says interesting words coming from a smug, cold son of a bitch who just dumped his girlfriend after she begged and pleaded for an ounce of sympathy. And the thing that I think about when I hear that part of the scene is it's just proof that Dawson and Pacey were long not friends before Joey and Pacey ever were like, romantically a thing. And it's just proof, like, in season 2 we saw a lot of it where Pacey and Dawson were never really friends, and we could see it, like, after Dawson forgot his 16th birthday, Dawson wasn't really, like, a good friend, like, they never really had that connection. However, they kind of acted like they did, like they were those friends, like, you like, it's one of those friends, like, you'll text all the time, but you never really hang out, and that's kind of how I feel with, like, Pacey and Dawson. And Pacey says, at least I didn't send her father to prison, which is proof that Pacey and Joey were kind of on the same page. Like, of course, Joey would never say, like, you sent my father to prison, but Pacey would in his drunk stage. And it's kind of proof that obviously Pacey and Joey have talked about it, and Joey has gotten her thoughts with everything that's been going on and everything that happened with Dawson. Like, Pacey is on her side. And Dawson says, no, you just made her go crazy. Like, what the heck? That was obviously when Pacey says, at least I didn't send her father to prison, like, that was a punch in the face. But Dawson had to go even more farther than that and just say, like, you made her go crazy, which is not, like, it's not an insult to Pacey. It's more an insult to Andy. Like, the fact that he would say something like that. And we know how Pacey feels when someone, like, offends Andy in any type of way without really Andy knowing about it. It's one of those things where he'll, like, punch them in the face automatically. Like, he did that to his dad, and we saw that in the last episode of season 2. So, after Pacey punches him, Dawson immediately throws a punch at Pacey. And Pacey, like, he's just on the ground, and Joey runs up, and she says, Pacey, Dawson, what are you doing? And Pacey says, it's my fault, I'm sorry. And Joey says, this has got to stop. And Dawson leaves, and Joey to Pacey asks if he's okay. Which, I love how, obviously, Joey's mad at Dawson for, like, Eve and that kind of stuff, but I do love how much she, like, automatically goes over to Pacey and asks if he's okay rather than asking if Dawson's okay. If this was season 2, I feel like Joey would have gone to Dawson whether she was mad at him or not. Like, if Jack and Dawson got into a fight, I'm pretty sure that Joey would have automatically gone to Dawson rather than Jack. And I feel like this was kind of like a sense where Joey and Pacey were a little bit closer, but she knew about everything that was going on with Dawson. Like, she wasn't automatically going to go to like, Dawson be like, are you okay? Like, obviously she wouldn't do that because she was mad at him, but in another sense, like, she didn't know what was happening, but she knew that, like, everything that's been going on with the boat and the makeout with the pep rally and now the PSATs and now this, like, Joey knew that Dawson needed to get his act together because this wasn't Dawson. And that's why she kind of went up to Pacey at first and asked if he's okay. So then we have scene 16, which is scene 6 of Pacey and Joey. So they're on the dock, or at Joey's work in the office, and Pacey is kind of like putting his hand on his mouth, and Joey comes in with carrying like a Diet Coke, and Joey says, hey, brought you, or a Diet Pepsi, and Joey says, hey, brought you a Pepsi, and Pacey says, no thanks, I'm not thirsty. Look at how Pacey's like, I'm not thirsty, like, I don't need that. And Joey says, it's for your lip, moron, and there's some ice, because they don't have ice. And Pacey says, I can't believe he thought I took it. And Joey says, so what, Pacey? And Pacey says, I thought if I earned anyone's respect, it was Dawson's. I mean, the guy that I know, the guy who knows you better than anyone else on earth thinks you're a loser. Then maybe, and Joey says, then maybe you are one. Which, I kind of agree with what Pacey was saying, but not really, because I feel like Dawson kind of gaslight him a lot of the time, saying like, oh, like, I know you better than anyone on this earth, and I know this, and I know that, when obviously he doesn't. Like, there were certain things that he didn't know, and it goes back to Pacey's birthday, where he was like, do you know how I got this scar on my lip? Do you know all these different kind of things that goes on at home? Like, no, you don't, so obviously you don't ever know everything about me. And Joey asked, so then maybe you are one? Come on, I mean, I thought you were a loser for years, but you never believed me. I love how Joey says that. Like, it's just proof that, like, they're at a different point in their relationship where they could actually, like, talk about this rather than fight about this. And Pacey says, it's just, you know, when does a person start believing in the general concepts about themselves? And Joey says, when it's right. And Pacey says, do me a favor. And Joey says, what? Pacey says, would you tell your friend Dawson that I'm innocent? I mean, he'll believe you. And Joey says, my friend? Look, he's your friend too. And you know as well as I do that he's somewhere right now soaking the gravity of his wrongful accusation. So I feel like Joey is like, why are you saying he's just my friend? Like, you two have known each other for years. And I feel like in this scene we kind of grasp that them two are friends, and that they've been friends for a long time, and Pacey knows that Dawson would believe Joey more than Pacey, and it's kind of sad. And Pacey says, oh good, let him stew in his own pride for a while. And Joey says, we're all guilty of that. And Pacey says, hey, I never accused him of cheating. And Joey says, well, I'm pretty sure he would never take the first swing at you. And Pacey says, he started the whole thing, and Joey says, I'm not getting into this. Which, I love how Joey's just like, keep me out of this no matter what, because I'm already thinking that Dawson's not the greatest person on earth. And it's just, again, proof that they're at a different point in their relationship than they were, like, a couple episodes ago. Like, I feel like a couple episodes, them two would never go after that, and Joey would go over to Dawson rather than Pacey if this happened a couple episodes ago. And Pacey says, okay, so tell me. And Joey says, what? And Pacey says, what do you think happened to that test? And Joey says, I don't know. To be honest, I don't want to know. You know, there are certain things in your life you're better off knowing, and certain things that you wish never knew, never asked, and never saw. And Pacey says, okay, so tell me honestly, does it look bad? And he like shows like his chin, and then Joey says, on your face, any reconstruction surgery whatsoever is a definite improvement. And Pacey just gives her a look, and Joey starts laughing. So I love them too, because in this scene it was kind of like that scene where it was, like I said several times, it is different. Like, they're not pouting together, like they're not soaking into this like moment where it's like, oh, like I hate you too. It was a different kind of like thing because they're friends now, and it was a different friendship that started in episode 1, and obviously we're only like a couple of episodes in the season, but you can just honestly tell that them two are becoming friends when they need to, And it's proof that, like, even though Dawson threw a swing at Pacey, like, Joey went to Pacey when this happened. Like, and I feel like with all this, like, Joey and Pacey needed each other in this moment, because Pacey was like, something is not right here because he is accusing me of cheating. And Joey is like, well, I mean, everything that happened, like, I don't know, it's kind of just how it is. And Pacey is really disappointed in this scene, but Joey tries to, like, cheer him up, and I feel like that's a really sweet thing to do, because they are different in that way. Like, she knows how he's feeling because she's been feeling the same way since Dawson has been going with Eve, and she's like, well, I mean, Pacey, it is what it is, like, this is how it's going. And even though she says, like, Dawson didn't throw the first swing, like, she knows how Pacey does feel, like, how he feels, like, disappointed that Dawson doesn't believe in him, and Dawson suddenly just doesn't know how it feels. And again, it kind of goes back to how their relationship is different, because Pacey defends Joey. Like, he knows that would get under Dawson's skin, and Dawson knows that if he mentioned Andy, like, that would get underneath Pacey's skin, but it's just proof that how them two are different in this episode. Like, he believes in how Joey feels, and how Joey feels about everything that's been going on. So then the next scene of Pacey and Joey, and the last scene of this whole episode, it goes into the library, and Principal Green is handing out the PSATs, and Pacey and Joey are staring at one another. And Principal Green says, today's PSAT will be 2 hours and a half long. As you know, there are 5 sections, 2 verbals, 2 mathematics, and 1 writing. There will be 1 15-minute break. Are there any questions? So, I took the ACT, and when I took the ACT, it's kind of like that, but they have, like, timed sections. Like, there's 60 minutes for math, I believe there's, like, 30 minutes or 45 minutes for English, 30 minutes for science, and there's one other that we take. But anyway, it was kind of like that. And for the PSAT, it's kind of the same thing, but we took breaks, like, for each section. He kind of had to pass it out and do everything. And he says you people have 30 minutes to complete the sections, which I guess it was kind of like the ACT. Now it's like the ACT rather than the PSAT, which I know was probably popular in 2000. And Dawson stands up, and Principal Green says, can I help you, Mr. Larry? And Pacey says, what are you doing? And Dawson says, it's a long story, and he leaves the room. And Principal Green says, okay, if there's no one else. And Pacey stands up, and Pacey says, I left that one on. And I love how he gives Joey a look, and Joey gives him a look back. Like, they know that they probably talked about this in the scene that we haven't really seen. Like, I feel like it goes back to last scene with Pacey and Joey, where them two talked about how she was like, so then maybe you are one? Like, maybe if Dawson thinks that you were a loser for years, then you are a loser. And Dawson was like, oh, like, or Pacey was like, no, like, I don't know. And Joe was like, I thought you were a loser for years and you never believed me. And that was kind of her way of saying, so why believe Dawson? Why believe Dawson when you know that you're not a loser? And that's not how it should go. And so Dawson and Pacey are outside, and I love how Dawson's like, what took you so long? And Pacey says, it's those analysts, man, they're a killer. Remind me why we just did that? And Dawson says, because if we're gonna beat the crap out of each other, it should at least be over a chick. Foreshadowing. And Principal Green then says he may begin for the people inside, and Andy was the one who stole the test. Surprise, surprise. And she wasn't really slick about it because she hasn't even broke the seal yet. So the next episode that we have is episode 4, the home movies, and we'll get into that next episode. I And I just want to say about episode 3 was there was a lot of things that did happen with Pacey and Joey. Like, we kind of saw how they trusted each other and how Joey kind of influenced Pacey a lot of the times. There wasn't like a moment where I saw in this episode where I was like, wow, like Pacey and Joey are not that different than how they were a couple episodes ago. Like, it was totally different. And I also feel like when like all the scenes with Pacey and Joey came up, like there was a lot more scenes with them too, but I love how there were a couple of scenes where I'm like, wow. Like, I love how he goes over to Joey after he was drunk and trying to get over Andy. I love how he was smart enough to know what Joey was saying even in his state, and Joey took care of him. And it was kind of like one of those episodes that we saw where it was different because she would have never gone to Pacey if this all happened a couple of seasons ago. Like, it was different because them two, they changed a lot. And with Pacey and Dawson, you can just tell that they're not really in the same state as they were in season 2. Like, there were a lot of beef going on, and both of them kind of like knew each other's problems, so therefore they took their problems out on each other. And they were like, well, you sent your girlfriend's dad to prison. Well, you made your girlfriend go crazy. Like, that was the kind of scene that we saw. And when I first watched this episode, I was like, wow. First of all, who stole this test? And at first I kind of thought it was Pacey, and then when this, like, punch scene happened, I was like, oh, it's gotta be Joey. And then I'm like, wait, what did Joey say over to Pacey? And then I was like, maybe it was Jack or Jen. And then when I saw Andy, I went, that makes more sense. That makes a lot more sense. And I thought Eve had something to do with it throughout this whole thing, because I was like, Eve has something to do with this. Like, she wants Dawson to turn on his friends, which would make more sense, but sadly that's not what happened. Which makes sense with Andy, because Andy has a lot of things going on and she needs to do better on her PSATs. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of things that really went on, but we could just tell that Pacey and Dawson were in the same state as much. And Dawson, I love, like, we're gonna see a lot of things that happen. And obviously, this is a spoiler alert for any person that has not listened, but if you're listening, like, this whole podcast is not spoil free. And Dawson says, because if we're gonna beat the crap out of each other, it should at least be over a chick. Which later in the season, it is over a chick. It's over Joey. So that is everything that we have. So if you like this episode, please make sure to subscribe on the YouTube channel. That's Jacey's Creek Podcast, where I post every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's also other platforms that you can listen to, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure to review this podcast with kind words, please, only. Make sure you comment, subscribe, share, whatever you need to do. And also, you can catch every episode again on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I would love to hear your thoughts on Instagram. That's Witter and Potter. And my TikTok is Pacey and Joey. I hope to see you guys again at Friday and Saturday and Sunday. I love hearing your guys' thoughts, so please, 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 please make sure to comment down below. Bye, guys.